and welcome you watching News9 Live with me Neha Khanna, and joining me here in the studio is my colleague Brijesh Pandey. Over the next few minutes we're going to decode for you a very important judgment that has been delivered today by the Supreme Court of India. In a very significant order addressing the menace of hate speech, the Supreme Court today said all states must register a case every time a hate speech is made, even if there is no formal complaint. And delays in filing hate speech cases will be treated as contempt of court. Terming it a serious offence, the top court said hate speech is capable of affecting the secular fabric of the country. We make it clear that such action be taken irrespective of the religion of the maker of the speech, so that the secular character of Bharat, as envisaged by the preamble to the Constitution, can be preserved. The court also said it has been entertaining petitions against hate speeches in different parts of the country for the larger public good and to ensure the establishment of the rule of law. With this important ruling, the Supreme Court has extended the scope of its 2022 order, which had directed the Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand police to take suo motu action in multiple hate speech cases. Now, this ruling applies across the country. Given the alarming rise in hate speeches in India, it is a verdict that was much needed and indeed very welcome. But the question is, are political parties listening? All right, to understand what the ramifications of this order are likely to be, I am joined by my colleague Brijesh Pandey and senior advocate KC Mittal. Brijesh, let me start with you. Of course, hate speech is not a new phenomenon in this country, but in recent years we have seen an alarming rise in instances of hate speeches. A case in point being the multiple so-called Dharam Sansads that have been held here in Delhi and elsewhere, where calls have been given, call to arms have been given, where inflammatory speeches have been made targeting certain communities. And in most of those cases, the people who made those speeches got away. What do you think today's Supreme Court order changes from here on?
Well, I think, I hate to use this word landmark for most of the cases, but today is a landmark judgment if you look at the time we live in. The fact is now the onus is on the police. And if the police, they don't have to hide behind the veil of nobody has filed complaint. Yeah. If a hate speech has happened, they have to file complaint. And if they don't file complaint, it will be considered as a contempt of the apex court. I think this will definitely deter the police authority across places, and now it will empower those who will now get the chance to report these hate crimes if no action has been taken by the police suo motu. I think it was a much needed and much welcome judgment. If you remember, last year, the justices even went to the extent of calling state important.
Yes.
And said that, if the state behaves like this, so powerless, so important, why does it exist at all? And this was an outrage which was expressed. And this particular judgment, I think, will, I won't say bring the entire hate speeches to a screeching halt, but this will definitely deter, because now the police or the authorities will find it very hard to, they will not find any facade to hide behind, saying that, oh, we didn't knew that, oh, there was no complaint and things like that. So I think it's a very, very welcome judgment as far as the time we live in is concerned.
A very welcome judgment indeed. The police can no longer claim that there was no complaint filed or that they did not have the requisite permission to act in a certain case. Let me go across to KC Mittal. Mr. Mittal, as Brijesh just pointed out, in the month of March this year, while hearing, a case involving the Maharashtra government, the Supreme Court of India expressed its anguish in very strong words, saying the state is impotent, the state is powerless, it does not act in time. Why do we have a state at all if it is going to remain a silent spectator? But the question really is the state helpless and quote-unquote impotent, as the Supreme Court put it, or is it simply a lack of political will, where governments and political parties are only too happy to look the other way when these kind of hate speeches are made?
Let me tell you, the overall atmosphere is charged with hate speeches, and it's commonly known. We read that most of the time in the newspapers also, or even on TV channels as well. And these are all motivated allegations made in public, whether it is rally or individual groups, it is done. Hate speeches has become today the motivated and a calculated design to attack the other religion or community. And this is what has been happening. And we are thankful to the Honorable Supreme Court of India for having taken cognizance of such events and having issued this stringent, I may say, directions to the state governments and the union territory. Why should a state government, why should the police, wherever, whichever the state it is, whether it is ruled by one party or another party, or the party at the center, or in the union territory, is it not their duty to proceed and take action and register FIR, as in when any such incident happens where there is a hate speech? They are not doing it. They just ignore it. And that is the reason why ultimately Supreme Court had to make these kind of observations for on an issue which this suo motu, the state governments or the union territory, the police should have done it and taken it. They don't do it. It's unfortunate. Let me tell you another important aspect of it. If you go to election laws, hate speeches are prohibited over there also under Section 125 of the Representation of People's Act and Model Code of Conduct. It's a part of it, of the Model Code says no political party or any of the individuals or the candidate will make hate speeches, and if they do it, it's a serious offense. The whole thing to be understood is we have to maintain the amity and peace and tranquility.
But Mr. Mittal, can I ask you this? Sir, you were right in mentioning that certain laws have existed already that prohibit hate speech. But fact of the matter is that nobody ever seemed to care, least of all political parties. But now that the Supreme Court of India, no less, has said that if there is a delay in filing a hate speech case, it will be deemed as contempt of court. Do you believe this is likely to have a chilling effect on political parties and state governments? Are they likely to spring into action now that the Supreme Court has used these tough words? Do you realistically expect things to change on the ground, sir?
I hope so, because the action is to be taken by the local police. It is the responsibility of the Commissioner of Police or the SHO of a particular police station to take action. Let me tell you, I was dealing one case where case of an accused for bail, and when I saw the recordings, it was really horrible. The kind of hate speeches that were provocative speeches, those were delivered, but the police was just, despite being a witness, being over there, being party to the rallies, did take no action. They were just as if they were just participating themselves in these kind of activities. If this continues, then what will happen? It will lead to a kind of anarchy in the country. And the country must convey thanks to the Honorable Apex Court and the judges, those who have passed this kind of order, where they have even gone to the extent to say that if the police doesn't act on the basis of the suo motu, then it would constitute a contempt of the court. And why ultimately we need this kind of direction from the Honorable Apex Court? Is it not the duty of the police officers at their own level? If they find anybody making hate speeches, they should register cases and prosecute them. And that is really, I'll tell you, if you want the amity, peace and amity in the country, if you want Now I'm dealing with another aspect. If you want the country, the secular fiber of the country to survive, it is very necessary to deal this kind of nuisance and the crime with a very hard hand and teach them a lesson so that don't repeat it. But unfortunately, that's not happening.
It's not
being
happened so
repeated
far.
day in and day out.
Yes. Will it change is the big question. Of course, the Supreme Court said today that the secular character of Bharat, as envisaged by the preamble to the Constitution of India, needs to be preserved. And you know, there are multiple instances of hate speeches that have been made by different entities across this country. But as I said earlier, one very important example that comes to mind is of various so-called dharm sansads that were held in the national capital and in other parts of the country, where brazen incitement to violence took place, targeting a particular community. Those videos went viral on the social media. All of us saw those videos, and yet the police acted as if they had no idea that this had happened. But Brijesh Pandey, you know, Mr. Mittal makes the point that it is incumbent on the police force of a particular state or union territory to act in such a case. But let's face it, Brijesh, the police are amongst the most politicized institutions in this country. You and I both know that the police report at the end of the day to the state government, the political party in power. And we know that for far too long, state governments and political parties have chosen to look the other way because obviously they believe that there is political mileage to be derived from hate speeches.
Well, absolutely. You know, and the thing is that, you know, you ask the question that is the state important? No, state is not important. State
It's a
is
lack
being
of
selective.
political will.
No, state is being selective.
Selective,
So
yes.
state is being selective of what helps them politically or what doesn't help them politically. See, the point is that, you know, that ideally in a much in normal days, you know, the kind of dharm sansads you are referring to, all those people would have been put behind bars and they would not need an intervention of any particular case or court or anybody, you know, to tell them what they are supposed to do. It's all there in IPC, CRPC. You don't need separate interpretation of law or separate addition of any law for the police officers or a policeman on the ground to curb those hate speeches. It is already there. But the reason that's the reason I call this judgment remarkable is the fact that, you know, this judgment is taken away even the fig leaf which the police would use to, you know, to cover the kind of political orders they would have received. This would take away the fig leaf. If you don't take any action and if those Dharm Sansad videos are going viral, anybody can go to the court and the court will have then, you know, very tough searing questions to ask to the concerned police officers that why did you not file a suo motu case? Because now the fig leaf of having a complainant is also gone. It doesn't require anybody to go out there and put his own life in danger given the kind of surcharge atmosphere that would be there post any such incendiary speech. That fig leaf is gone. So, you know, they have to act. And if they don't act, now for the public to demand accountability from the police force would be a lot more easier because the court has very clearly said and categorically said that they'll be treated as contempt of the court.
Contempt of court. Final question to you, Mr. Mittal. Very quickly, sir, before we let you go. Now that the court has taken a tough stand on this, next time somebody makes a hate speech, let's say here in the national capital, in order to make an example of them, do you believe the Supreme Court of India will direct, let's say, the Delhi Police Commissioner to appear before it in person and explain why there was no action taken if that is indeed the case? Do you believe that is the way forward and that's the only way we can make the police in this country accountable?
No, let me, before I go to what you asked, of course, Supreme Court would certainly take action against any such officer who doesn't act in terms of the... Today, unfortunately, the situation is slightly different. The secular character of the Constitution is being eroded, number one. Number two, hate speeches has become a modus operandi to polarize for electoral benefits and purposes.
Yes.
That is the overall atmosphere in the country. Therefore, hate speeches are provocated one after another. Even the persons, those who are under oath of the Constitution to hold the secular fabric of the country, they themselves violate it and make hate speeches.
Yes.
What do you do in such a situation where the persons holding constitutional positions make hate speeches? That's the unfortunate part in the country.
Absolutely. Members of parliament and ministers are known to have done it.
And this is what is happening day in
Yes.
and day out.
Yes.
And brazenly they flout the law and nobody takes any action. The police can't dare to take action against a minister.
Yes.
That's unfortunate. But the judgment, the order of the Honorable Supreme Court now, I hope so, will certainly deter the police concerned officials concerned to register a FIR. And
Let's certainly hope, sir, that the Supreme Court staff stand puts the fear of the law in the law enforcers. Hate speeches, as you rightly said, are unfortunately not just encouraged but way too often weaponized for the sake of vote bank politics. Let's hope the Supreme Court order changes that to at least some extent. Thank you very much, KC Mittal and Brijesh Pandey, for joining me on the show. Time for us to take a quick break.